Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel. And today we have with us three very special guests. They come from a company called Cooler Heads. Cooler Heads is a fascinating organization because everyone listening is familiar with the hair loss that comes with cancer treatment. This company has found a way for those undergoing treatment to maintain their hair, full heads of hair, hence the name Cooler Heads. It was founded by Kate Dilligan and joined by Ryan and Courtney. Kate's the founder, Ryan is the chief commercial officer, and Courtney is the VP of North American sales. We get on today and we discuss their entire experience, the very inspiring story Kate shares. And I'm going to leave it there. I don't want to spoil anything, but it is a fascinating story, an amazing company doing amazing things. And for those of you listening, you want to be just that much more tuned in to today's episode. So many wonderful things to learn from and be inspired by. As always, we do our best to bring you innovative guests that are really disrupting industries and pioneering new ways within healthcare sales. Thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I really do hope you enjoy this interview. Hello, everyone. So before anybody says anything, I have three amazing guests on my show today, Kate, Ryan, and Courtney. I'm going to let all of them introduce themselves. They all come from this organization called Cooler Heads that is, they're disrupting industries. So I'll leave it there. Kate, please tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Kate Dilligan, CEO and founder of Cooler Heads. And what Cooler Heads is a technology company that is building the evidence-based products, content, and services that cancer patients need to manage the side effects of treatment. And I came to this because in 2016, I was a cancer patient. And I found out firsthand that there's a huge disconnect between the care that you get from your oncology team. But when it's time for you to worry about your hair falling out, about mouth sores, about radiation burns, you're all on your own. And that's the gap that we're filling in the market.
Fantastic. And then Ryan, please talk to us how you came to join Courtney in this endeavor.
So I got to know Kate probably, Kate, it's almost a year and a half, 2 years ago now.
Yeah.
And we had started the conversation kind of when she was starting to think about commercialization and what it would look like and how she wanted to build a team and what targets she wanted to go after immediately. And so long story short, we developed a consulting relationship where I had kind of worked with her and we were kind of perfecting the go-to-market strategy, building the model, trying to figure out what was going to work and then what wouldn't work. So we didn't waste a lot of time, effort, and energy, and then just building out the numbers so that she could go get her funding at that point in time. Come full circle, and after a couple of different almost, we came to an agreement to have me come on board full-time, and that was in July. And I had been working with Courtney at that time on my consulting company that I had developed after our last endeavor. And Courtney was intrigued by it. I was intrigued by it. So we both jumped on board. I'll let Courtney give more of her rationale and her story, but that's kind of mine.
All right. Courtney.
Yes. So as Ryan mentioned, I was working with him on the consultancy side and was introduced to Kate through that side of the business. And I will have to tell you, meeting Kate, she is one of the most dynamic, intelligent CEOs that I have ever met, especially being this female in this leadership role. So knowing that she went through everything she did and the passion she has behind what our big vision is at Cooler Heads with treating patients, she pulled at my heartstrings. And there is this synergy amongst our team. And, we were consultants at that point in time, and that synergy just kept growing and growing and growing. And before you know it, here I am, here Ryan is, we're full time. Kate lured us in, and we can be more excited to be here.
Fantastic. All right, so let's take it back to the basics, Kate. Please give us your story. What was
Sure.
going on with you to how this company actually came to be, and let's get into the details of what you guys provide as Cooler Heads. But please give us a story first.
Sure. So, my cancer diagnosis came out of left field. And, I'd had a tough couple of years because my mom died of cancer. My dad died of Parkinson's and Parkinson's dementia. And then all of a sudden I found a lump, oldest story in the world. And turns out that it was breast cancer. And when I was going to all my initial appointments, nobody was talking to me about symptom management. It was actually one of my best friends who was with me at those first appointments who did the research and found out that there's actually a therapy called cold cap therapy or scalp cooling that allows chemotherapy patients to keep their hair. And when
Okay.
we asked my nurse navigator about that as I was getting ready to start treatment, her reaction was, "Oh, yeah, we've seen people do it and it can be really successful, but we just don't talk about it because most people have to pay at least $6,000." Well, I
Wow.
wound up spending eight, which is,
Okay.
an extremely good, like that's an African safari trip, right? Like it's a lot
Sure.
of money, but I was
Sure.
able to keep my hair because at the time I was an executive at a company where I was employee number two. I was running a big business unit and I didn't want the world to know that I was sick. So like here's like the crux of what it is that we're doing with symptom management and especially with starting off by providing this therapy to patients is we talk a lot about privacy, agency, and identity because what you don't want as a cancer patient is the whole world to know that you're sick and for you to be pitied. You
Right.
want to be seen like I wanted to be seen as Kate, not a cancer patient. And that was
Sure.
really important to me, at the
Absolutely.
time as I was going through it, because that allowed me to kind of do heads down and keep my eyes on, the prize of what I was doing, but also compartmentalize my cancer treatment. And so I'm just going to give a 2 minute about what the therapy is because that explains like how we're so disruptive and how we're changing this market. So
Absolutely.
what scalp cooling is you bring the patient's scalp temperature down to 65 degrees before, during, and here's the kicker, for a minimum of 2 hours following chemotherapy. So chemotherapy kills all fast growing cells in your body because the tumor is fast growing. So that's why your hair falls out, you get mouth sores, you have digestive problems, you have nerve damage. Like it's kind of like it's a blunt force instrument to kind of attack every fast growing cell in the hopes to shrink the tumor. And that's why
Sure.
the treatment is so arduous. So by making the patient's scalp cold, the blood that's going to the hair follicles, like those capillaries constrict. And so that vascular constriction prevents the hair follicles from absorbing chemo, and that allows the patients to keep their hair. So the way this has been done in the past, and there are, systems that were cleared by the FDA before our product became commercially available this summer. And because the therapy is before, during, and for several hours following
Mhm.
treatment, the legacy systems keep the patients in the chair for basically twice the amount of time as their chemo infusion, which if you're the CEO of an infusion center, you can't afford that
Right.
because you need to
Right.
have another it's the restaurant problem, right? If somebody pays their bill, you want them to get up to leave so you can sit down
Right.
somebody else and they can order, appetizers and drinks. So what we've done with AMA is we've created the first, FDA cleared patient administered portable system for scalp cooling. So patients are offloading nurses, but they're getting this therapy that has superior fit and superior functionality than the legacy systems. But critically important, when that patient is done with their chemo infusion and they have a few more hours of cooling, the device has multiple power modes. So it's got this magical new technology called a battery, you and your listeners may have heard of that allows the patients to unplug it and to go someplace else to finish up their scalp
Wow.
cooling.
Wow. Okay.
And so we basically, and now that Medicare is reimbursing for this therapy, we're the first solution for this kind of symptom management that's profitable for infusion centers because we're
Wow.
not costing them extra chair time and it's a reimbursable therapy. And what we're seeing out in the field, and Ryan and Courtney can talk about this a lot more, is a cancer patient is worth a lot of money to a health system. Like it's probably about $250,000 in profit. And so there's a real knife fight, as one of our investors described, over how do you attract that patient to come to you? How do you
Right.
have a compelling enough suite of services that, when people go what I call cancer shopping about, well, I'm going to get a second opinion. Let me see what this doctor says. My friend had a really good experience with this doctor or a bad experience with that doctor, so I'm not going to go there. How do you allow an infusion center or a health system to have this comprehensive suite of services so it makes it easy for the patient to choose to go to get a treatment at one particular health system over another? And that's what we're doing.
Wow. Now that, from how this came about to the model you guys are executing, I mean, this is huge.
I've got to say, like, having pros like Ryan and Courtney on board who, are leading our direct sales effort. I was joking with Ryan. We got our first account and got our first purchase order in less time than Liz Truss was Prime Minister of Britain. So we're really like seeing like there's this huge pent up demand for, because
that was cold, Kate. That was cold. Go
ahead. But like there was, like what we're seeing is that there's, infusion centers and health systems know that they have to provide this therapy because patients are asking for it. But like the other systems, it's been like, if they had it, they only had it for people that asked for it. And now we're creating, now we've built a product and we're helping them build programs. So every patient, when they go through their chemo training, if this is appropriate for them, are told that now this is an option.
Wow. Okay. Geez, this is fantastic. Ryan, you're right there on the front lines with Kate. What are you seeing as the biggest? I mean, when you hear this, it just sounds like a no-brainer, and you guys can only go up, period. But what would you say are some of the challenges you've seen in driving this concept and helping these infusion centers realize the benefit?
It's an interesting question, Samuel. It's I wish it was always as easy as you indicated. You hear the story and it's a no-brainer.
Right. Like, why wouldn't I do this?
The reality is, though, you've got to educate. You've got to educate the folks that are utilizing the technology, that are seeing the patients, and you've got to help them understand the differences and specifically the key differentiators that we provide. And I think, for those that have been in the startup world, the name carries a lot of weight if you're a big company, and it doesn't carry any weight if you're a little company. And when you've got a big name associated, big company name associated on your business card, it's easier to get in front of folks. Well, we're coming in there as Cooler Heads. Most people haven't heard of us. We're trying to establish a market and establish brand recognition. And I think that's the first challenge. That's what Courtney and I face most often is we've got to get somebody to be willing to talk to us. And then the second piece is, look, the scalp cooling market's been around for a while. This is not the first technology that's been created. And the other companies, quite frankly, they're good companies. They've got great technologies. They've done a very nice job of establishing the market. What we're trying to do is just to iterate on that market. And so we've got to show folks that are used to what the predicate technologies bring, why we're a bit different and why we're potentially a bit more advantageous for them inside of their infusion centers. And so those are the two biggest challenges, Samuel. And then, past that, it's the same traditional challenges that you're always going to hear as a med device rep or probably as any sales rep in any industry, which is all of the traditional, the norms. You've got to get the right budget cycle. You've got to find the right product champion. You've got to do all of the little things that you're supposed to do to work through the process. But other than that, it's just kind of getting in front of the right folks. And those folks in our case are traditionally medical oncologists, nurse navigators, surgeons that are dealing with these chemotherapy patients. Court, what are your thoughts?
No, I think that's the biggest challenge for us, especially as a startup, is just getting in front of people, right? And in a world of now everybody pinging physicians, nurses via email because of COVID, they're even more inundated than they were before by people reaching out to them. So what we find that's been most beneficial is really using our connections and our network and getting warm introductions. And that's how we're getting in front of the people we need to talk to. Once they get in front of us, they see the technology in person. That makes all the difference because it speaks for itself.
Yeah,
great point. And Samuel, one thing that she just said that kind of resonates with me is, we've done all of this initially as kind of a grassroots effort because, quite honestly, we weren't planning to get this aggressive commercially until really 2023. But the feedback and the response from the folks that we've been talking to is kind of similar to what you said. It's kind of a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you do it? Well, that's kind of the feedback and the response that we're getting. So it's kind of been hit the accelerator a little bit earlier, but it's still
Nice.
very much grassroots. We haven't been to one trade show yet. We haven't really done anything from a marketing perspective except what Courtney's done via social media.
Sure.
We're doing everything word of mouth, and it's already kind of rolling downhill, if you will. So I'm really excited to see what happens in 23 when we can actually streamline our process a bit, when we can actually hit the trade shows, we can do the marketing campaigns, we can kind of do things more what I will call in a focused manner as to more of what we're doing now, which is a bit of a shotgun approach.
Absolutely. Now here's one thing that I'm curious about. So just to give you guys a little bit of my connection to cancer. My mom was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2008, and of course, it sent the family in a frenzy, and us trying to figure out what we can do. And we did all of us, family effort. I have three sisters. We all kind of tried to figure out what can we do to help in every capacity possible. But we'd never heard of this. I've never heard of this. I'm wondering why is it that we've never heard of it for the mere fact that we're not actually dealing with cancer ourselves, or would you go as far as to say that this is just not well known in general?
I think we've all got a different thought there, because I've got a similar situation to you, Samuel. My mother was diagnosed with breast cancer. And that's why Kate's story really resonated with me. My aunt was diagnosed with breast cancer. So
Sure.
I think everybody's got a connection to cancer in some way, shape, or form. And for me, I think part of the enjoyment about this job is the connection. It's easy to get passionate about something that hits this close to home on so many
Absolutely.
ways. I mean, for Kate, it's right at home. For me,
Right.
it was obviously my mother, my aunt. So I saw it happen. This was never even a conversation. This technology never had a conversation. Nobody even had heard of it. And I think that it's momentum. It's a lot of, and I've got to give credit to the companies that existed before us. They've done a lot of great work in establishing the market, in building a little bit of what I will call groundswell, if you will, around the technology and what it can do. And again, we're just trying to take that to the next level through iteration. But I'm sure that, again, that question is probably a different answer for both Kate and Courtney.
Well, please share, Kate, and then Courtney.
So, coming into this space, I'll be honest, I never knew about scalp cooling either. And there was a part of me that was questioning why would people be interested in this, until I spoke with Kate and understood the reason why she wanted to keep her hair. And I've talked to more patients about why it's not about vanity in this scenario. It's about keeping your identity, keeping your privacy. And then after learning their stories and putting myself in their shoes to really kind of get the feel of what that would be like, I get it. Do I want my kid to come home from school and see that I don't have hair and that I'm sick every day? No, I still want him to have that same foundation, that same day to day that he's always had. I don't want his life to change. So anything we can do to provide normalcy to people is
Right.
huge during this time of, and Kate, you know better than anyone when your life is completely out of control.
Absolutely. And, and what we're also seeing is that, depression in cancer patient leads to poor outcomes, which costs payers money. Our first patient in the Pacific Northwest is one of the 8% of chemotherapy patients that refuse chemo because of hair loss. And like we've seen people, throughout COVID not make rational decisions about their health.
Yeah.
And chemo is such, it's hard, man. It is really, really hard. It was a
Absolutely.
tough, not only 4 months of chemo, but, the 2 months of recovery afterwards. I mean, it really turns your life upside down for 6 months. So how can you compartmentalize that? How can you go out to lunch with your friends and feel normal, go to work meetings, be on a Zoom and feel like you're still you, and more than a cancer patient? And and what we're seeing now is, this therapy is now recommended by the major oncology medical societies, as well as the American Medical Association, as well as the oncology societies globally. Like the emotional impact of hair loss on chemo patients, and not just women, but on men, because it just throws your life even further out of control. Like symptom management is becoming, I think, the next frontier in oncology, because if you can prepare a patient better for the things that they're going to face and help them recover quicker, that fundamentally is going to lead to better outcomes. And ultimately, this is a business. It's going to cost insurers less money. And so improving patient quality of life, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have, because that's how we're going to make cancer treatment more bearable and help patients get back to being healthier faster.
Right.
Samuel,
Right.
combine that with the fact that actually reimbursement now exists through CMS,
And
and
that.
you've got a kind of a perfect storm.
Right.
Patients are getting smarter. There's more information available to them, via Google, via blogs, via social media outlets. And on top of that, CMS is like, we need to reimburse for this. So you combine all of this perfect storm, and you've got a situation where education's just starting to hit all of these patients that are going
Gotcha.
through chemotherapy, the entire cancer side effect process. And that's why I think you're finding a lot more people understanding and knowing about this type of technology.
Gotcha. Now I got a obvious question that anybody can answer. I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about what this news must be like to someone that does have cancer, is in the middle of chemotherapy, and is hearing about you guys for the first time. What does that look like? Is that even? Are you guys? I'm assuming you guys are patient facing, or is it more you're talking to the practices and they're disseminating the information to the patients? What does it look like right now with what's going on?
Well, so we've actually pivoted. I'll be honest with you. When Kate and I had initial conversations way back when, it was, we want to be patient facing. We want to go deliver our technology to the patient. We want the patient, because our system is designed to be patient centric and therefore patient administered. We wanted to go to the patient. The reality of it, though, is if you want to get properly reimbursed, the best way to channel this from a distribution standpoint is directly to the infusion center. The infusion center then provides it to the patient. The infusion centers can get reimbursed for what they're providing to the patient. And you've kind of got a win-win scenario. You've got a potential revenue stream for an infusion center. You've got a potential solution for a patient, and you've got a good business model. It's kind of what makes the entire med device process work. So our focus now is we're calling on and working with infusion centers all across the country, both privately owned, community centers that are hospital-based, academic institutions, major academic institutions that are hospital-based. We're working with them to provide them with the capital, or the chilling unit, if you will, and then also the disposables. They provide the disposables to the patient, and we're off to the races.
So, do you guys still get to find out from patients what the feedback from the patient on what their experience is like, or are you guys pretty removed from that at this stage?
No, we get the patient's feedback, Samuel, and we have somebody who goes and installs these accounts, and they are sitting with the patient every now and then. So we do understand what they're feeling, what the results are. We're monitoring what those results are, because that's very important for the growth of our company as well.
Got it. Yeah,
I mean, it's basically like the user feedback that we've gotten, because we get, unsolicited emails from the users who, have either used NAMA already or using it now. And I can mirror that with my own experience. It's gratitude. It's relief. It's like you can finally, it's like when you're swimming underwater, you come up and you can finally take that first gasp of air, like that sense of, oh my God, I don't have to lose my hair. I can look and feel normal, like just the relief that we're seeing. And, we're actually seeing this from our accounts is, they place a purchase order, and then, we tend to get a phone call, which is, but can we just get one? Because, a physician in our network is starting chemo. A member of our admin staff is starting chemo. There's this one patient who's refusing chemo. If we could just get it for this one patient. And so the accounts get it too.
Wow. That is fantastic. So tell us a little bit about what stage you guys are in the growth process. Are you guys hiring right now? Are you building a sales team? And if you can speak to that, what does that look like, and what are you guys looking for?
So we are again, Samuel, we're going a little bit faster than originally we had planned to be going.
Sure. Good thing. It's a good thing.
It is. They're mostly good problems to have, but we are in a point now where, look, we are bandwidth limited. So we are hitting the accelerator a little bit faster in areas that we didn't anticipate hitting it as quickly until 2023. Right now it's myself, Courtney, Caitlin, and Julia that are kind of the commercial team, and we're kind of being the touch points for all of our accounts and all of the accounts in our pipeline. Based on kind of that account base growing as fast as it's growing and our pipeline growing as fast as it's growing, we are in the process of bringing on probably what I'll call 4 to 6 individuals. There are some strategic conversations happening that will require us to potentially pivot a little bit in how we bring these folks on and who we bring on. But long story short is I think what we're looking at is at least another 4 folks from a commercial standpoint in the very near future, another 2 folks from a implementation, installation, and training standpoint, and then potentially some clinical support folks as well, to make sure that our end user experience is what we expect it to be. I think the thing that I'm a big fan of and that I always think about and consider is you need to have an end user experience that's consistent. And the only way that you get the utility that we expect and we want for patients is to make sure that that end user experience is exactly what we would hope it to be, what good looks like, if you will. And
Sure.
Court and I have a ton of experience in doing that over the course of our careers in the med device space. And I think what we're really doing, Samuel, is we're just trying to replicate it. We're
Got it.
literally taking what we know has worked in the past and putting it together over here. And with that, we need some clinical support folks to just ensure that that experience goes like we want it to. Courtney, what are your thoughts in regard to that side of it? Because that's my mind of the folks that we're hiring right now. Obviously,
Sure.
those numbers are going to blow up pretty quickly as well.
Sure.
For sure. We're definitely in a need. And as Ryan said, it's just 4 of us on the commercial side. And we are, I will tell you, burning the rubber at both ends. Is that the right?
Candle,
No, that's
candle.
yeah, rubber can work. Rubber can work.
I do so good with my analogies, man. No, I think what Ryan's saying is completely on spot. And when we look at these individuals, it's coming down to who has passion, who's going to blend with our team and have that same synergy. We are all about culture here at Cooler Heads. And when we look back to the previous companies that we've worked for, it has come down to the synergy with the team, because the team also will make our success. If we all can gel together, work together well, the sky's the limit when it comes to what we can achieve in the sales in the market.
And
So
here's the thing that I want to just throw into that is like what we're looking for is builders. And so not somebody who's coming in and be like, well, here's a playbook, because what we're doing is we're building that playbook. And like one of the key things that Ryan, Courtney, Caitlin, Julia are bringing to the fold is how do we help these institutions that are bringing our technology in create a scalp cooling program? How do we make it so every patient, when they get chemo teaching, which is part of the process, they're told about scalp cooling? How do we help them make sure that every patient that starts knows about this? And so this is roles for people who are excited about building something new. And we're going to have like, oh, we tried this, that didn't work well, let's try it this other way, or feedback like, hey, we've learned with accounts that are, local hospitals, this works well. With large academic institutions, this works better, and so it's people that have that passion and that excitement, and so not just being like, yeah, I'm selling, the same widget every single day.
Right. No, that makes perfect sense. So if I'm a medical sales professional and I'm listening to this episode right now and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? This is right up my alley. I am a builder. I believe in this. I'm connected to this personally. I want to get involved. What are some of the must-haves that you guys say I should have coming to the table? If I'm thinking now, okay, how do I get in touch with Courtney? How do I get in touch with Kate? Or how do I get in touch with Ryan? What should I have already asked myself and been able to answer before I get in front of one of you?
Well, I was going to say, I get the question all the time in the interview process, and I answer it the exact same way every time. So, Samuel, I am not a guy that looks for specific experience. I know that a lot of companies specifically do that. I know that a lot of individuals have, they got to check the box off of certain things. I am, I guess, what I would refer to as a best athlete kind of individual. I believe that culture is the single most important piece, and traditionally, I feel like you can tell over the course of a couple interview process how culture is going to work. I think that you've got to have somebody that's willing to just work really hard, because we're a bunch of hard workers over here, and I know that there's a lot of folks that the work-life balance is extremely important. I think it's extremely important to all of us, but I think at the end of the day, we really like to work too. I mean, it's actually fun for us to get out there and do this, and it's fun to watch it impact the patients that we're immediately affecting. And so, you've got to be able to work hard, and then it's literally the simple things. Do what you say you're going to do. It sounds crazy cliche, but I don't need you to invent a model of why you're the best person for me. Give me some examples of how you've done it in the past, why you've been successful, be the right fit, and that's kind of what I'm looking for. I just I think some people overcomplicate the sales hiring process by
Okay.
trying to define specific characteristics that they're looking for. I want the best athlete and I want a lot of diversity, man. I don't want to hire the same person
Sure.
for all of these roles that we have open. If I hire the same person, I'm going to get the same feedback from every one of
Right.
these individuals. I want people
Right.
that have done it a little bit differently over the course of their careers so that I get a bit of a different perspective when I ask the same question to six people. And I think that's crazy important to me. So that's kind of always been the way that I've done it over the last 20 plus years. And it's worked out for the most part. And that's kind of the way that I continue to do it. So, and I think Courtney does it similarly, but probably not exactly the same.
Yeah, I agree with a lot with what Ryan said. At the same time, Ryan's been my mentor for 15 years, so he has had an impact on me. But I really believe in making sure that we do have that diversity and strengths from all sides, because that's what makes it a well-rounded team. I know that if anybody knows me, I'm a big believer in maximizing your strengths, and if I can hone in on what those strengths are with people on our team and let them thrive in that capacity, that's huge. And then back to what Kate said, a builder, it comes down to, thinking outside the box. How are we going to get to that next level? I like that entrepreneurial mindset because you're challenging the status quo, especially at a startup. We have to challenge the status quo. We're not a striker that can get right in through the door.
Right.
So, and then last is, making sure that person is consistent, because that's another key component of sales.
So then would you say that you guys are open to people that don't necessarily have a sales background? Maybe they were actually an entrepreneur themselves. So they've sold because they've sold their own service or product, but they're looking for something different. They're looking to join an organization that's growing. You guys would be open to that type of candidate.
I think the easy answer is yes. I would tell you that the first four hires that we make from a commercial standpoint, outside of who we already are and what we already have, the first four, it's a little bit riskier to go what I'll call sans sales experience, because as much as I would tell you that the three of us would probably say that's fine, we also have a board to answer to, and that board, look, they've invested heavily into our organization, and they want folks that have proven it and have done it before. But I think overall, absolutely, I would answer that question. Yes. Again, I'm less concerned about your experience. I want to make sure that you have all of the qualities that we believe you need to have from a cultural standpoint. And then the other word that is overused a bit, but I still think merits a little bit of conversation here, is accountability. Look, every one of us that you're talking to and everyone on this team right now inside of Cooler Heads has accountability. They're not afraid to admit it when they're wrong. They're not afraid to take ideas and thoughts from everybody else on the team, and they hold themselves accountable to what they say they're going to do. And that's extremely important to me. And I think it's what makes us all gel well together. And I think that anybody that we would bring on board, we would need to have that same characteristic.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. Okay, let's switch gears just a little bit. I want to take it back to the clinical aspect of this amazing service. So, talk to us a little bit about what some of the challenges are clinically, right? When somebody's introduces this therapy, what are some of the things that you've noticed that are maybe are a little nuanced that you're working to get around? And I say this because, I mean, everything has its benefit, but everything has its things to consider too that you need to work around. And I want people to have the full understanding when it comes to Cooler Heads and what you guys are providing for patients. So, what's some of the clinical challenges that you've noticed that you're working on, or you're anticipating you might have to work around when it comes to someone on this therapy?
I think for us, what we're learning how to do is how to onboard patients and educate patients quickly. So currently we have a very labor intensive process, and we're really very soup to nuts, and really because our focus is on making sure that so there's two clinical aspects of it that I'm going to talk about, and then Ryan and Courtney can add their thoughts. So there's the patient, but then there's the nurse. And so we're trying to make it so the nurses feel that we are very high touch with their patients, and we are not adding to their work, because we all know that there's a nursing shortage. A bunch of them quit during COVID because of all the craziness. And so how do we have a high touch product that makes the patients feel secure and empowered, and builds the nurses' confidence, and that we've done that for their patients and we're not just dumping it on them. And so what we're doing is we've been, extremely closely coupled, to what Courtney was saying earlier. We've tried to be at the first infusions of our first several cases at an institution so we can learn what works, what doesn't work. And we're using that to inform building out the whole digital suite onboarding, which is going to make it much easier for us to onboard patients. But we're really navigating that right now. Like, how do we onboard and provide nurses with that confidence that the patients are being well enough educated that it's not something else that they have to do? But Ryan, Courtney, I don't know if you have something else that you think would be important to bring up.
I think it goes back to the education component of scalp cooling. And there hasn't been a lot of information out there, Samuel. And from our standpoint, we like to share with the patient, keeping their hair, all their hair is never a guarantee. They're going to have some shedding, and every patient reacts different to scalp cooling. So we need to make sure that we're setting the right expectations. And that is at the forefront of us when we train those patients, because we don't want them to get upset when they start seeing some hair loss or seeing that shedding. But it's also been proven and documented that even if there is hair loss, they can still preserve those hair follicles. That way, when they're done with their chemotherapy, their hair growth can return faster. So education is a big component.
Yeah, not much to add there, Samuel. I think it's when you think about the question that you ask, I think there's two sides that you have to consider. There's the clinician side, and then there's the patient side. And I think that, as Kate kind of indicated, the clinician side, there's a bandwidth issue based on just kind of the shortage and the staffing scenarios and situations going on right now. And then there's the patient side, which is the unknown and the education that Courtney talked about. I think the only other thing that I think about as I think about the entirety of the commercial process is the administrative side. It's the other component that doesn't probably get as much notice as it should. But look, administration's got a job to do. And as much as we all hate the premise in many ways, healthcare is a business. As much as it should be just about patient care, it's unfortunately not. It's a business. And so the administrators at these institutions and these facilities have to find a way to maximize their patient throughput, their chair utility. And what we believe we provide them is with that option, because the system's portable, because they can go places. But look, it still changes things. I mean, logistically, scheduling, there's a lot of the components that we've got to get in there, and we've got to work with their team to help them build. And as you know, anytime you change anything, there's chaos, and people kind of push back like, hey, we don't want to do that right now. We don't have time to do that. So the more we can get in front of them, the more we can talk to them, the more that we can give them examples of how we're doing it at other places where it's working for both the patient, the clinician, and the administrator, the better the situation is for us. And it's just kind of finding that story and perfecting that story, and working with a bunch of different folks that we have as early customers to get there, to get where we need to get. So a lot of things to think about, and we're going to continue to get better as we go.
As much as you guys, one thing I love that's a consistent theme with what you guys are doing is that you want everybody to win. You want everyone that's involved to see the value and to get some benefit from really being able to focus on the patient. I have some curious questions that I just want to know if there's numbers on. Is there a percentage on how successful this therapy is for patients? I'm assuming you guys have something to show when you make the case for why the therapy should be utilized to the infusion centers. But if you can share with us, what's the percentage on the success rate with this? What are some of those expectations that you help the patient realize before going to therapy?
Yeah, so the standard is that 2/3 of patients will keep at least half their hair, and we're working on improving on that. We're too new to say that we're improving upon that. That is our goal. That is where we will be. But fundamentally, it's that the patient is going to, their hair will thin. As Courtney said, there will be what's called shedding. But if it's done evenly, you can go out to dinner and look and feel normal. And so that's really our North Star.
Samuel, I want to add to that, though, because I think early indicators, into Kate's point, we're in the process of conducting studies, clinical data that will give us some efficacy numbers specific to our platform. But I think early indicators are pointing to even better outcomes than that. And I think it's credit to Kate and all of the work that she did around the IP associated with the capping system that we use. It's different. And that difference allows the patients to avoid the patchiness, the bald spots that you sometimes see with other platforms. And I think because of that, we're actually going to see significantly better numbers. Now, we can't throw that out there yet because those numbers have to actually be proven through that clinical data. But I can say this much: we are liking a lot about what we're seeing with the patients that we're already providing this platform for.
Nice, and that's you answered it already. My next question is going to be: do you guys have a research team where you're actually working to improve this therapy? And it sounds like you do.
I just want to jump in because I'm really proud of this. We've actually just received a $2 million grant from the National Cancer Institute to do research on this. So, back to this is important in cancer land writ large. So the medical societies are recommending it, and the National Cancer Institute is investing in our technology to demonstrate its efficacy, because NCI, all these other institutions like NIH is understanding that patient quality of life is ultimately tied to better outcomes. And so, yeah, we do have a research team that is working on this, and, being funded by the federal government to do this research, huge feather in our cap.
Speaks volumes. That alone is the selling point. I love it. I love it. Is there anything else you guys would like to share about Cooler Heads, about the team you're trying to build? And of course, for any interested professionals listening to this episode, things that they should consider if they're thinking about calling you guys.
I think it goes back to what we've already discussed, and that is what we're trying to build here at Cooler Heads. And, we're looking for those passionate individuals. If somebody does have interest, feel free to reach out to us. It's unbelievable how many people won't connect to other individuals on LinkedIn when they have interest about their company or to learn more. Reach out, introduce yourself. You never know what's going to happen.
Excellent.
Yeah. And for me, nothing more to add, Samuel. I think I think Courtney kind of hit it on the head. For me, it's just be passionate about what you're doing. If you can find something to connect with, whatever the job is that you're doing, in our case, obviously it's the scalp cooling side, it's the oncology space, it's the, everybody's probably been touched by somebody either that they know well or a family member that was, diagnosed with cancer. It's just super easy to get passionate about this. And when you get passionate about it, you actually want to work harder. You actually want to, look, we're right now, we're warriors as far as travel goes. We are on the road constantly. But there's a part of that that's a lot of fun when you know what you're doing and you actually get to see the outcomes and the benefits. So for me, that's it. If folks are interested in doing something like that and they can find a way to make this connect with them, then that's kind of, I think, how it's connected for the three of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we want passionate, smart, creative people.
Couldn't be said better. Absolutely. This has been fantastic. How can people find you guys, and how can people find more about Cooler Heads? Where should they be going?
Well, they can go to our website at coolerheads.com. Connect with us on social media at Cooler Heads Care on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and then also via LinkedIn at Cooler Heads, and reach out to us personally on LinkedIn.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, we are so excited to see everything that happens with Cooler Heads. You guys are clearly on an amazing breakthrough. As Kate said in the beginning, you guys are disrupting a space, and that's exactly what we're hearing. So we're excited. We can't wait to see more from you guys. And thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Okay, so before any of you go, we're going to have a lightning round to cap off. So I said thank you, but we're still going to continue. I'm going to ask everyone on the show right now a series of questions, 4 questions. And I think the way we'll do this is I'll ask one question and I'll let each person answer. And then we'll go until you guys have all answered those 4 questions. So first question, best book you've read in the last 6 months. We'll start with you, Kate.
Carrie Soto is back.
Ooh, what is that? I've never heard of it.
Novel. It's a novel. It's about somebody who was a tennis star who decided to go back and reclaim her title.
Ooh, a comeback story. That has to be good. All right. Ryan?
I am trying to think of the title of it. I believe it was called Rise and Go. It's actually a book that a buddy of mine wrote, a buddy of mine from college wrote, and it's just kind of a very cool story about kind of what's made him successful. Good guy, and kind of I read it after he sent it to me, and it's been pretty successful as well. So I've been reading more contracts than I've been reading anything else, so I try to stay away from the printed word as much as possible.
Fair enough. All right, we'll definitely keep that one in mind. And then Courtney.
Hey, I'm going to be honest. I'm not a reader. I'm a podcast listener. So I will say the Mindset Mentor is one of my favorite go-tos. And of course, the medical sales podcast.
You know, you had to do it. You had to do it. There's
I
no way.
I did.
That is fantastic. All right. And then the best movie you got, movie or show you've seen the last 6 months. We'll start with you, Kate.
Best show. I would say for me, it's a tie between Rings of Power and House of the Dragon.
Man, this Rings of Power, so I read I'm a big reader, and I read the Lord of the Rings, and I loved it. And I
Yeah,
can't imagine a show coming anywhere near close, but you're probably the fifth person that said it's a good show.
it's
So I
great.
will, a great show even. So
Yeah.
I'll have to take a look. All right, Ryan.
I'm gonna go House of the Dragon only because it's the only show I've watched lately. It was I enjoyed it. It was good. I still don't think it's as good as its predecessor, but it was
Sure.
good.
Sure. No, I'm a fan too. I get it. And then you, Courtney.
I mean, this is really boring because I'm the same with the other two. House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon. It's
So
good. I think it's actually pretty good. All right. All right. Two more questions. Best meal in the last 6 months. We'll start with you, Kate.
There's a restaurant here in San Diego called Cali, and my brother was recently visiting. So we had this great grazing menu at Cali, and they have this dish called Aleppo chicken, where they marinate it in yogurt for 48 hours, and it's got
Oh,
this like
wow.
sweet and savory kind of crust to it that's just phenomenal. So for
Okay.
those of you that when you hit San Diego, you want to get a reservation at Cali in East Village and try
Oh,
their Aleppo.
that's happening. I go to San Diego sometimes, and that's happening. I'm going there. Ryan.
Yeah, mine's a little place called Pepe's. It's a restaurant that's not very far from my home here in St. Louis, and a little Italian place. The guy does insanely good work, and we love going there. A, because it's close and we don't get out of a 4 mile bubble anyway. But B because it's one of my favorite Italian places in St. Louis, and St. Louis is notorious for good Italian food.
Wow, I never knew. Excellent.
Yeah.
And then Courtney.
mine is Strata, and it was a little Italian restaurant in Asheville, North Carolina. I went there with my mother 2 weekends ago and had a really
Okay,
nice
this
meal.
great suggestions all around the board. That's fantastic. All right. And then last question. Best experience you've had in the last 6 months. Why don't you kick us off, Kate?
I think it's the thank you emails from patients that we've gotten.
Fantastic.
I think
Beautiful.
it's the feedback from patients saying thank you for building this, thank you for making this possible. Because this was an idea that I had back when I was in chemo, and then I started the company in 2018 on a lark, not on a lark, but all by myself. And so to be getting feedback from patients who are saying, and who are complimenting me on saying, Caitlin, Julia, Dan, Ryan, like these are amazing people. You built this team. Like those emails are they warm my heart for, all the
Oh,
super
imagine.
late nights and all the stress.
I can only imagine. Amen to that. Ryan.
Mine's kind of two. There's kind of two sides. From a personal standpoint, my kiddos are at that age where they're doing a bunch of different things and playing a bunch of different sports, and so I kind of like watching the natural progression of them, and
Sure.
seeing them get better at different things kind of makes it feel a little bit better about me doing what I do on a daily basis and traveling all the time to give them the ability to do that. So I like that side. From a professional standpoint, look, my job over here is obviously the commercialization side of the business, and we're seeing just a really healthy amount of traction inside of the commercial side. And so, look, Court and I put in a lot of hours, and Caitlin and Julia put in a lot of hours. And so seeing just kind of the benefit of that, and seeing all of the folks that we're talking to get excited about the technology and the platform and bringing it into their institutions, look, it just naturally just makes you feel pretty good about the effort that you're putting in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then Courtney.
For me, it's being back in that startup environment. For me, it's when I feel alive. It's been stressful, it's been exhausting, and it's been really challenging to balance life. And I'm trying to find my new norm. But at the same time, I know it's the best place for me and where I really, again, come to life. So yeah, it's been wild.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you all for being on the show. Can't wait to see more from Cooler Heads. And yeah, let's all stay in touch.
Awesome.
Thanks, Samuel.
Thanks, Samuel. Appreciate it, bud.
And that was Kate, Ryan, and Courtney with Cooler Heads. Fascinating story, isn't it? I mean, wow. I talk to a lot of people that are just doing things in the industry. They're high performers, or they're executives, or they're They're creating new ways of how medicine is practiced or how medicine is addressed. When I came across Kate and her story, I mean, gosh, that is something else. It just goes to show that all of us deserve to feel how we want to feel. And healthcare, the essence of healthcare is to help any patient be who they really want to be, live their best life. And that is exactly what Cooler Heads is helping people do. And I mean, you can see the growth of the organization. Who isn't moved by the impact they're making, and who doesn't want to get behind it? It's wonderful. Maybe you listen to this episode and you're thinking to yourself, wow, what would it be like to be part of a company that's doing something like that? Don't hesitate to reach out to them. They're a growing organization. And if you're someone that's thinking about getting into the industry, then you already know what I'm going to say. evolveyoursuccess.com. We want to help you make that kind of impact, whatever field you choose. Healthcare sales is something that we firmly believe in. And if anyone out there has a passion to be a part of it, we absolutely want to help. So thank you for continuing to listen to the Medical Sales Podcast and hear amazing stories like what you heard today. Make sure you tune in next week for another episode. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.